Here's one about my son and myself, called Only the Lonely. Suddenly I was a single parent on welfare. The suddenness was startling, yet time had elapsed, endless time with disappearing weeks and interminably agonizing days. But still it was all sudden, as loneliness is always sudden, even after years. Our son, Billy, elected to stay with me when my wife left, and that's the only reason I wasn't consumed by grief and loneliness. He was 12 and more than capable, but I had to enroll him in school, make sure he had the needed supplies, sign all the forms. I signed one with an X, and he said they wouldn't accept that. I told him to say I was illiterate. He shook his head. So I added a junior after the X, and he said, now it's kosher. I'd get him up in the morning, somehow take him shopping for clothes, and whatever else I did. His needs were the only motivation I had for getting out of bed, my only reason to bother living. One day I was walking up the street and he came out of a 7-Eleven with a big gulp, a huge container of root beer. It was a hot day and I watched him suck on the straw, a look of delight on his face. He was truly enjoying every sip, every drop. Yet when I saw him, I felt like I had been kicked in the stomach, the world pulled out from under me, and my heart ripped from my chest. I knew he must have spent his own money he must have earned in some way. I certainly had none to buy him a big gulp, and it made me so suffocatingly sad to know he had to spend his own money to buy a soda. When he saw me, he smiled and extended the container. Want a sip? I smiled and shook my head. No, thanks. Then hugged him. Good? Yeah. His face was all grin and light danced in his eyes. Only $1.50. Terrific. And I hugged him again as we walked up the street. So overwhelmed with sadness I was nauseous and had trouble breathing. I didn't want him to feel suffocated, but I had to reach out and hug him a few more times, or I would have started crying. We didn't have a car, so we did a lot of walking. And as we walked along the street, he would reach over and hold my hand, and I would melt into his hand and the loving heart behind it, filled with gratitude for being able to be a part of such a wonderful human being. And then, from time to time, he would look over at me and say, I really love you, Dad. And all the pain would disappear, and I would be completely absorbed by the love and joy of the moment. When we got our food stamps, we'd go to the supermarket and have a great time just going up and down the aisles, tossing food into the basket. It was remarkable what his presence did for me. It made shopping a celebration of love and joy. One day we made a pot of beans. We soaked them overnight and started cooking early in the morning. We threw in some of this and some of that, garlic, chili powder, onions, peppers, and whatever else struck our fancy. And from time to time, we would taste them and lick our lips and ooh and ah and jump around and laugh. And you'd think it was Christmas, New Year's, Thanksgiving, and every holiday in the world all thrown in together. It was one of the greatest days of my life. That Christmas, we went down to the Salvation Army on Skid Row and spent the afternoon serving food. Another remarkable day with Billy. He was so happy serving those people, making sure the kids got all the milk they wanted. His smile lit up the entire building. We borrowed a car one day and went to Descanso Gardens, a place we used to go to a couple of times a month as a family. We climbed the nature trail and looked down on the gardens, and Billy laughed out loud as he remembered the time he, his sister, and I were here, and they insisted on leaving the trail, and I ended up slipping and sliding down the hill into a clump of poison oak. This day we stood holding hands, looking down on the gardens, remembering, laughing, and once again I was overwhelmed by his love and the beauty of our world. Jesus Christ. I have all these wondrous and happy memories, yet I feel like I'm drowning in tears because he spent $1.50 on a big gulp. What in the hell am I really grieving? Am I grieving over a lost childhood, the one I feel I never had? The years I feel were ripped away from me? Would I still feel so overwhelmed with sadness if I hadn't been taken off a ship in Germany at the age of 18 and spent 4 years in bed and had half my body chopped away? Is it simply self-pity tearing my heart in shreds over an ice cream cone I didn't get when I was a kid? Is it the agony of my wife leaving me that makes it so easy for me to forget the joy of walking down the street hand in hand with Billy? How can I so easily forget the laughter in his eyes and the love in his heart? Oh, dear God, dear sweet God, please don't let me shroud my son's future with the loneliness of my past.